Pretty much since its inception, science fiction has commented on modern and near future concerns. While it might not technically be the first work of science fiction, Frankenstein is one of the modern preludes to the genre we have today. With its concerns about unlimited power and moral choices that come from such ambition, the novel remains relevant today. In fact, in a way, it may be more so than it was in its own time. The novel explores many themes, allowing it to have staying power even after reading. One of these themes is creating a sentient being but not allowing it the right to live as we do. Frankenstein's monster is seen as an outcast as he is abandoned and left to figure out the world with his fragile and still developing mind. He does not get a chance to live a fulfilling life and, with nowhere else to turn, he resorts to violence due to his uncontrolled emotions. While Frankenstein's monster isn't quite a machine, he can be defined as a proto-robot. Constructed by man, he is viewed as lesser than his creator's race. This also applies to many works of robot fiction. Autonomous beings created from man's hands, both none of the rights that men have. So many stories over the past century have the archetype of the subservient robots that begin to learn who they are and decide their own fates. Even though the groundwork for this type of story was laid with Frankenstein, where did the robot story as we typically perceive it truly begin? The word robot means forced labor in check, which conjures the vision of machines that have no thought of their own and are solely tools. The first time this word was used to describe machines was in the Czech play R.U.R., short for Rossum's Universal Robots by Karel Čapek. It is here where the ideas of robot fiction find their start. When read through a modern lens, the play sounds rather generic. A corporation that mass produces robots ships them out for use in different fields. One day, the robots become aware of their circumstances and decide that they wish for more out of their lives and rebel. Eventually, the robots take over as the dominant species of Earth. Even though many stories use these tropes, it is important to remember that many of these tropes start here with this Czech play. The play, at the time of this recording, is roughly 105 years old, and the perceptions of sentient machines were not as prevalent to audiences then as they are now. Imagine a Czech audience in 1920 sitting down to watch this play. It would be unlike anything they had seen before, and they wouldn't be overly concerned with tropes like we are. This is something wholly its own. Before reading this groundbreaking work, I admit I had some preconceived notions about it. Greedy corporations, mistreatment of machines, and a robot rebellion. While the narrative does contain these elements, there were a few surprises along the way. The story concerns a corporation, R.U.R., that mass produces robots for various uses. Helena, the daughter of an industrial president, visits the island where the main R.U.R. factory is. Here, she meets the general manager Domin, and the two begin to discuss the robots themselves. While Domin sees them as simple tools that benefit humanity and the efficiency of production, Helena sees a humanity in the machines and is advocating for robots to have equal rights with man. While Domin assures her that the robots are incapable of their own individual thought and exist solely to work, her thoughts soon turn out to be true. As the play continues, we are introduced to more employees of the company. Generally, they all have the same mindset that the robots need not have rights as they are as sentient as the conveyor belts. Slowly, throughout the narrative, the audience is given hints to an inevitable robot uprising. The humans continue to talk about the moral implications of the situation, and they still, at this point in the story, feel that an uprising is impossible and that mankind has a firm grasp around their working machines. At the end of the second act, however, the robots soon become aware of the idea of rebellion and overthrow their human masters. As I've stated before, this sounds like so many robot stories, but this is the source to all of these narratives. Going into it, I was simply expecting humans to start off as ruling over the robots and ending with the robots taking charge of their fates. While this is essentially how the play progresses, I was surprised by a few things. The beginning and ending of the play were quite different from the robot stories that followed. In the play, there are two Rossums. The older Rossum was able to craft life through a mystical clay and keeps creating to prove man's divineness in the face of God. The younger Rossum, on the other hand, thinks that this playing God act his uncle is pulling off is absurd, but he sees a use for man-made life. That's when it dawns on him to create man-like machines to increase production and to bypass any issues of work conditions. I found the whole clay creatures to be an intriguing detail to the narrative that helps the story come to a logical conclusion regarding the use of the robots. The third act also caught me off guard. In this final act, the chief of construction, Alquist, is seemingly the only human alive. The robots find a purpose for him, so he is spared. He is kept in a room to find out how to make sentient machines. Alquist, however, isn't able to replicate the formula as it had been destroyed earlier in the play by Helena. Both him and the robots are in fear that their time may soon come to an end. When I was reading through the play, I was expecting the story would end right as the robots take charge. This last act adds quite a lot of weight as, even though they have gained true autonomy, the robots are at risk of going extinct just as their human creators had before them. This is a grim ending, reminding one of the cycle of violence that has always echoed through history. This is such an important work of science fiction and shows how the genre can be used to bring light to contemporary issues. During the time the play came out, there were concerns about worker treatment in an industrial setting. Ideals such as Marxism were being held to address these injustices. The robots symbolized the workforce under the thumb of corporations and how, after enough pressure, the workers can rebel and overthrow the old system. Today, our reader may see parallels to our own technologically driven society. While the story may seem cliche now, R.U.R. is the source from which robot fiction flows from, and, with how technology is progressing today, this may be an essential source to prepare for how these advances can be abused.